So just to start off, to welcome everyone to the first webinar proudly brought to you by Delta Accelerate. For those of you that don't know, here at Delta Accelerate, we help fast-moving ventures kickstart, grow, and scale their ventures, which gives perfect context to how this webinar perfectly ties into to Delta Accelerate, as the webinar is obviously using low-code to fast-track your MVP. My name is Callum Parton. I'm a delivery manager on our CodeLight team, which is our team that focuses on building affordable, fast, and high-impact solutions for founders and ventures, which usually means we are building those solutions using low-code or no-code technology. So for this reason, I feel incredibly lucky to be here with the panel and the group of panelists that we've got today, mainly for selfish reasons, because I get to ask them all the questions that I always want answered myself. However, as I said, it's not just me that's going to be asking them the questions. We will most definitely be getting to all of your questions, to everyone in the audience. So be sure to keep engaging and keep them coming through so we can get to them at the end. In terms of today's sessions, there's so many topics that we can cover related to low code and no code, more specifically low code in this session and this webinar. However, we wanted to approach the structure similarly to how we approach the situation of building a venture using low code. All low code projects start with the decision to use low code. So we'll be presenting some of the questions to our panelists on this decision before moving on to some other categories of topics, which include how does the use of low code affect the prioritization of features and determining what the scope of your MVP should be, then to the actual execution of developing these features in low code before we can finally get to address one of the more controversial topics, which is low code and its scalability, and finally ending off with discussing kind of what the next steps are for low code from our panelists. After that, we'll go through opening the floor to any questions from the audience. And yeah, before we get into the detail of these questions, it's my pleasure to introduce you all to the talented panel of guests that we have here today. In terms of my personal experience, there's actually no guest that has made more of an impact in my interest in low code than the main man himself, Niven Poleman here. Having previously worked at the Delta and being one of the flagship ventures, Workweek being one of our flagship ventures. Most of us know exactly who Niven is. However, Niv, if you could give us a bit of introduction to yourself and what you and the team have going on at Workweek.
Keep us bro. Got to keep you around more often as well. Yeah, how's it? I'm Niven. Like Caleb said, yeah, I'm ex-Delta, one of the, I don't know what you call it, alums. That's come through the what is now Delta Accelerate, right? But it essentially started off at Delta super early days on what is now known as Workweek. And yeah, heading up Workweek is the founder and CEO here. We're a HR platform for companies who employ blue collar workers. We've got the platforms built on the low code software, obviously Retool started off there, and yeah, we're growing quite nicely now. So that's me. I'm in Cape Town, and yeah, quite keen to be here. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Niv. When we set together the panelists, I knew I was going to have to make sure that I don't let you hijack the session to just ask all your questions to Taylor, because I know that you built a lot of your solution in Retool. So going then on to Taylor. Taylor, you're a product manager at the Visionary and Pioneer in Retool, which we're all very familiar with at the Delta, based on the fact that most of our internal system has been built of it. Could you give us a quick introduction to yourself and what you guys have got going on at the Retool team?
Yes, happily. And yeah, we love working with all of you at the Delta. You're a perfect customers. So it's yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to be on. Yeah, so I'm Taylor. I'm on the product team at Retool. I specifically work on our platform, and the way I describe, I think every company calls platform something different. But the way I describe our platform is, you can think of Retool as a set of different low-code builder tools. So you've got your web app builder, your mobile app builder, your workflows builder, your database builder. And then the platform is kind of what sits underneath all of those builder tools and connects the pieces together. And so the platform handles things like user identity and permissions and SSO integration and source control and the rest of the software development lifecycle, environments, releases, all the things that have to cut across all the builders and really help you appropriately scale what you're building in each of those builder tools. So that's That's me. Prior to Retool, I was also at Airtable for a while, so kind of on the other end of the low code spectrum, but been in the low code space for quite a bit now, and yeah, very excited about it. Clearly.
Awesome, thanks for that. I think when I was doing some research, I saw that you were part of the team that brought Retool database, which were involved in the process. So that kind of gives an indication to where you are kind of been involved, and I'm excited to kind of explore that a bit later, because I know we've got a lot of ventures that have benefited a lot from that feature. So yeah, moving on to Gary. While Gary, most of us at the Delta know you, your current stealth status has a lot of people intrigued and yearning to hear more and hear more about what you got going on. Could you give us a quick introduction to yourself?
Big fan of the Delta. Having spent a good year of my life there, was incredible. Just being part of the venture team where we advised and invested into startups and helped validate them. I think the exciting thing for me on that journey was just seeing the opportunity with all the no code tools out there, you know, and it's so easy to get things off the ground and validate your MVPs before spending unnecessary cash and investment, you know, with technical engineering teams, which aren't cheap these days, you know. And on that journey, one of the startups became quite popular and quite exciting, obviously in the AI game, and I've come on board on that, you know, so we're helping ship that out. So unfortunately, I can't speak too much about it, but I'm definitely really keen to talk more about my learnings, failures, and I guess mainly failures. I hope you can learn from my failures, I guess. But yeah, so very envious of Niv, I'm not gonna lie. I built an HR tech startup about 5 years ago, spent a lot of money and time on it, and I wish these tools were around today. Yeah.
Did you tell people about that one though? To get it out there. You tell people about
you
it.
have to.
Okay. Yeah, no.
At least we can get into some of the learnings, at least without too much of the detail of the ventures today. Cool. And then last but not least, Nick, at Revo, your aim is democratizing tech development through low-code development. However, I can imagine that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg to what you guys have going on. Do you want to give a quick introduction to yourself and what you guys at the Revo team have going on?
Sure. Hi, everybody, and thanks for having us. We're very excited to be here. We've been working with low-code tools since, you know, I like to think as soon as they started, just before they started to get really popular in the mainstream. We've helped a lot of businesses build out products that are client-facing, as well as a lot of internal tools. I think we're super excited about this space. I think the impact that low-code has on the amount of ideas that can come to life, as well as even in the job market, the type of people can actually take part that were previously prevented from doing so. So we're super bullish on low code. We're glad to be here and to spread the good word.
Awesome. Yeah, I think you've got a room of people full of people that are bullish on low code as well. So looking forward to discussing things further. Cool. And then after we've gone through all the introductions, as you can kind of see from what we have at this webinar today, we've got a very unique perspective of panelists here. We have the perspective of Taylor, who's focused on building the tools that will be used by founders and ventures. We've then got the perspective of Nick, who's using these tools to provide a service to founders and ventures. And then obviously we have Niv and Gary, who are working to either utilize these tools provided by Taylor or the services of Nick to set their own venture up for success. So I'm very excited for this webinar. I'm excited to dive into the detail. And I think we can start going straight into our questions now. A reminder to the audience to keep your questions coming in as we go through if you join slightly late. And we can dive straight into the start of every low-code project, which is the decision to actually go low-code. So I think we can start there, Niv, starting with you, looking back at the early days when you were making decisions around work weeks, MVP stack, tech stack. What were the factors that you were taking into account when you made the decision to go low-code or not?
Okay, so I think with our decision making around going low-code and work weeks, like starting point as a venture is like a bit different to like standard startup where which like started in the Delta as a bit of a client project, not knowing anything really about the industry that we were trying to like find a problem for and then ultimately like provide a solution for that. It's a bit of a different starting block, compared to being a founder that's got industry expertise, knows the problem, knows what sort of solution would be monetizable. So for us, starting from a place of still needing to find out the problem, it was important to not invest too heavily on product, but obviously now we need to build a tech product, and be able to take in feedback from market and push it back out to them in a solution that was quick to iterate, quick to move on, and just get it out to market based on literally like have a meeting, go back to the drawing board, design it, push it in 48 hours, and go back to that same client and be like, hey, look, we built this for you quickly. Can we do that? And I think it was the decision on like low code for us was the ability to like move really quickly and iterate in a manner that doesn't require many hands in the room. Really just requires like one sort of all-around product manager, UX person that can like set it up, and one low code developer who can like just press play and build it. So that was it. And also like budget constraints, right? Like if you Nick, I can imagine from your side, you have clients coming to you and they've got their budget constraints. Everyone wants the world built for a small amount of money and in no time. So that was something that we were dealing with too. So picking low code was the best solution for that. And that's essentially why we picked low code in the beginning. Was those few points, was being able to iterate quickly in a market where we didn't understand what the solution would be, and being able to move fast so that we didn't like lose momentum or really just not piss off our client, really, if I could say that, get back to them as quick as possible.
Yeah, and you mentioned Nick there, because Nick, I'm sure you've been in a situation where you've discussed that decision with countless founders and ventures before. Are there any other factors that you're taking into account and communicating with them? Anything over and above what Niv has mentioned?
I think Niv's touched on the main ones there. I think the budget constraint is real. That is a big decision in kind of choosing to go low code and being able to get your MVP out there as quick as possible. There's also the technical challenge, which a lot of founders these days are trying to be non-technical, not necessarily reliant on having that technical skill set to be able to get the idea out there. And if you're trying to go that route, there is really no other option. You can skill up on low code relatively quickly. You can start to build something quite fast that you can test with your audience and get some product feedback, some market feedback. And that really is the thing that low code enabled.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with that, there's common pitfalls and challenges that come with low code. In terms of navigating those when you make the decision, how do you usually approach that with the founder or the venture?
Yeah, I think there are pitfalls, and I think it's a very exciting space at the moment in the sense that there's a new low code platform popping up every other week, and that makes it really challenging to be able to figure out where to start. So one of the biggest pitfalls that I think we've identified and try to help people navigate is which is the right platform. All of the different platforms have their different areas of competency and their different areas of focus, because they're trying to be relevant in this space as well. So kind of being going in and not researching which platform aligns best with what you want to achieve, what the type of features that you want to be able to deliver, is going to be something that's going to hamstring you and prevent you from kind of achieving your end goal. So certainly see that is a key thing to make sure you've done your research on up front.
Okay, I mean, you mentioned the tools there, and Taylor, you've got the perfect perspective of the tools. There's obviously a set of users or customers that are best suited for low code that kind of are the perfect match for a retool. From your perspective, what are those factors or those characteristics that for a project that makes retool perfect?
Yeah, good question. Certainly, I think where speed is paramount, that is where retool really shines. And we talked about it a bunch, but I think especially in the early stage, oftentimes the hardest part is figuring out that product market fit and what features you need to be able to sell. And that's, I mean, for most types of products, a much harder problem than actually building the thing in the first place. And so when you're in that mode of iteration, when you're in that mode of experimentation, speed, I think a platform like Retool, or really any low-code platform that you can distribute to end users, is almost a no-brainer early on to get those to figure out product market fit. And then I think the other side is interfaces where the specific pixel perfect design doesn't make or break the product itself. I think we've all come up in the world of consumer products that are very carefully designed, but the reality is, like most B2B products, most B2B SaaS products don't need that level of specificity. It's really about the feature, it's really about the business model, it's really about the go-to-market motion. And if you look at some of the most successful B2B SaaS products on the planet, they're not very visually interesting. Salesforce, I think, is a great example of, if not the biggest B2B SaaS product on the planet, could easily have been built in low code. Obviously, the scale is another question, but from a pure interface perspective, the interface could be built in low code. So I think those are the two areas: speed and also just the nature of the product that needs to be built.
Yeah, I think that's it's a great perspective to get that from the tool side. And I think it's perfect then to close off with Gary. And we can't speak about the current venture, but you've been in countless situations where you've made this decision to go low code. Any characteristics of kind of the project and the venture that made that decision directed in that area?
Yeah, I think I would echo that statement is about choosing the tools. I think at the end of the day, you want, it's all about the idea and it's all about validating your product. So you can very quickly get into analysis paralysis, trying to figure out the right tool. And it just goes kind of back to the coding days, like there's always the new shiny object syndrome, there's like some new tool on the block. And you just got to do what works well for you, So do a bit of research. And my advice to anyone is just get something out there and ship, and rather validate than waste time just trying to try out a new product every week. Obviously you got to do your research and make sure it's going to fit your requirements. If certain no-code tools have got better features or better requirements based on what you want to get out of it, but just ship, man. Don't get stuck on getting into like analysis paralysis mode.
Yeah, okay. I think that's super valuable context, and I mean, speed is kind of the overarching thing that we've been discussing here. Gary, you kind of mentioned validation there, and ultimately, building an MVP is assuming that we can provide a solution to a certain problem. However, we often make mistakes. We're not right. Just before this, we were talking about failing, and a lovely quote that Niv gave us. But in terms of this low code revolution, how would you say that that's helping founders kind of reduce the cost of their mistakes that they make?
It's like getting to market is all about speed, and time. And you can so quickly just waste that time and effort perfecting your product. And the unfortunate thing is you can get very stuck on like technical details, like simple things like creating a validation form that validates if the person's got the right email. We shouldn't be wasting hours on that. You can get very stuck in technical difficulties. And especially for founders, not for product managers per se, but founders, most of them get stuck in building the product. And building the product is actually only 25% of what you're going to get done. You still got to interview customers, you still got to go to market your product, you still got to be raising investment. And that's the most important stuff, actually. The product itself is not much, So in the early stages, you really want to make sure that you validate. And the key thing is actually getting out. The biggest problem I fell into was actually getting stuck behind my desk and building this product all the time, with my team. And what I realized the hard way is that I'm actually going to be in front of customers, like being with them, interacting with them, seeing where their pain points are, and then bringing that back. And no code is just the perfect way to get that speed and acceleration to get things shipped, So yeah.
I almost want to hand this over to Niv, because I know, Niv, I was in the office with you a lot of the time when I saw you grafting through Workweek, and validation and your kind of low code MVP was key in that process. So maybe you want to talk us through the process of the validation process for Workweek and how low code played a major role in that process.
Yeah, for sure. It's a bit like what Gary's been speaking about here, which is just ship it and speak to customers. I think that early on we can and what's interesting is like early on we were doing, and we did for like about a month. We were looking at all these like fancy features that we could like add, because that's also what can start happening when you're building on low code, is that it's so easy to add something that you're like, okay, cool, let's keep adding, let's keep pushing. But when you're like looking to build something that makes clients or customers happy and actually makes money, it's about like getting in front of them. So that's what we focused on, and the way that I think it's been like a culture of work week since the get-go has been building with the speed from just client requests and customer requests as quickly as possible. So that's, I mean, our like validation process has been, well, how could I say this, like cold calls. Okay, let's get like, what would you need to solve your problem that you're having right now? My employees, I don't know where they are, don't know what they're doing. I need to like run payroll. Okay, what do you need to run payroll? This. So can you send us what your Excel document looks like right now? And we just basically like copy paste that and like automate the back end stuff and build that, and like get back to them in a week, and they're like, oh my word, how did you do this? I'm gonna stay on board. And it's like, sick. We'll just keep building with you, get a reference, move on to the next one. And that's essentially what like validation meant for us. But I don't think that would have existed for us if we couldn't keep that momentum going with those first, few customers. And that customer that we got on board, I mean, shout out to Sarah for Mark from Acton Gardens. She's still on board with us right now. And I think that validation comes with, it doesn't come from within your team. It comes from people from outside. It comes from customers telling you what to do. But then eventually, once you got some level of validation, then like crafting the vision around like what the business could be to become a venture. And that's what we've done. I hope that like answers the question, but really just chat to customers, iterate quickly, use them as guinea pigs, like pull them into a Google Meet, show them what you're building before pressing play, and just ship it. Yeah.
100%. I think that's the perfect answer to that question. And we have moved to the part of prioritization and how you determine the scope of your MVP and what you need to validate and things along those lines. And speaking of prioritizing features, I know, Taylor, I mentioned earlier, you were part of the Retool database team. And I'm sure it's a bit of a different process in terms of how you determine what features you're going to build for users. But I would be super interested to hear, what is that process at Retool? How do you hear or prioritize what users need, and basically just diving into what that process is for you?
Yeah, great question, and certainly broad process that I wish there was a single answer to this, but I can certainly speak in the context of Retool database when we took that and launched it. So I think for us at Retool, since we're kind of a more established product and platform, it really starts with what type of product writ large are we trying to build and for whom? And I think every product decision we make has to align with that. So for Retool, from very early on, well before my time there, the decision was Retool is going to be a high code, low code platform that's designed first and foremost for someone who is at least savvy enough with JavaScript or SQL or Python to be dangerous. Not necessarily a professional developer by any means, but at least someone who feels like they can write code or can learn it and then write it. So that was decision number one. So that reflects across the entire product. I think if we took different approaches to different parts of Retool, whether we wanted to build for a low-code audience or a developer audience, the product would look very disjointed, and it would be hard to thread a single person throughout our life cycle. So when it comes to Retool database, first decision was we can't abstract away the database. We have to make it feel like a real database underneath and make it feel like you're really touching a database, but abstract away the boilerplate and the annoyance. And that was design decision number one. So you get real Postgres fields, and we hide it under like an advanced dropdown, but like you can go down there and you can choose whether it's an int 4 or an int 8 in the UI. And that was really important to the design of that product. And then the other decision, the kind of key decision, and there were a million along the process, but I think most interesting one was, do we want to turn Retool database into sort of like an Airtable competitor, like a real-time live data editor spreadsheet type product where multiple people are in there at the same time editing the data in the retool database UI. And we decided actually against that. We decided we didn't want to go down that route of like building real-time multiplayer editing in retool database because we already had the retool app editor. And so the thought was, let's make database part of this larger platform where we have the app builder if you want to kind of build the app that end users are going to use. And let's have database be the data layer, and let's make it really good at modifying, database schemas quickly, but let's not try to make it like the all-in-one editor tool that would stand alone as a productivity tool. And so that also just simplified the scope, obviously, dramatically, and also kind of keeps the platform coherent and consistent. So that's how we thought about retool database itself. And I think to some extent, it makes it a less useful product in some ways, but it kind of has to be part of this larger cohesive whole when we're building on a platform like retool.
Okay, and it's super interesting to hear the perspective of you and an assumption of a route that kind of wouldn't work. Are you gauging the user feedback when you do launch something to kind of see if that assumption was correct, or not just on retool database, but kind of on all features that you guys launch?
Yeah, definitely. And we look both qualitatively and quantitatively, and it kind of starts with the hypothesis of what we want, the impact we want this feature to have, rather than specific feature requests that we hear. Because I think we could chase down feature requests all day, and it would be a very disjointed result. And so we have to have that thesis up front of what do we want this product to be for. And for retool database, it was, well, one, it had to be technical, like I mentioned, it had to be a real database. But really, one of the challenges with retool is you needed to bring your data if you wanted to get any value out of retool. The first screen when you started retool in the past was connect your database, and very few people are willing to give a new product their production database credentials before they even see what the product can do. And so what we needed was, and the thesis of the product was, if we gave you this data layer out of the box, we would see higher activation rates early on because you didn't have to connect to database. You could just use the one we give you and start understanding what retool is all about, just all internally without having to reach outside of retool. And so that was really the metric that we were looking at when we were deciding whether this was successful and whether it proved the thesis. And activation rates for new customers who touch retool database were about two to three times higher if you touch retool database versus if you didn't. So that thesis clearly bore out with that product.
Okay. Speaking of change requests, I'm sure Niv has a couple of things that if he could corner you, he would and start moving up the backlog if possible.
Man, I'm frantically writing notes in the background of here. These are some gems. Yeah. I think if we had to start like early days, I think we would have gone straight into the retool database, because I think that's also like one of the things was starting with low code is that you can also move so quickly. But if your house is built on like just sticks, it's not going to work really well. So yeah, that would definitely be something we would have changed early days, because I know it's something that requires quite a bit of work, like to rebuild. It required quite a bit of work to rebuild on our side.
Yeah, scalability is definitely one of the more, as we said earlier, controversial topics related to low code that we'll definitely tackle just now. Before we do move on, because the next topic is getting more to the execution and the development of low code. I do think, Nick, if we look at Gary and Niven's perspective, it does indicate a bit more of a scrappier approach. However, not everyone is always as open to being scrappy, and especially when you've got a client that is kind of coming and wanting something built and paying for something to be built. How do you usually navigate setting the scope of your MVP when you feel the right option is being scrappy, but maybe the client isn't as open to that option?
It is very challenging, and I think also depends on the type of founder and I suppose the business owner who's come to you with the problem. Because everyone's got their own perspective and they've got their own beliefs around what is going to be a successful product. I think most people who come to us know that we do build in low code, and obviously the key benefits of that are getting things out there quickly and being able to iterate and get that feedback fast. So I don't think we have to necessarily sell people on that benefit. That's often why they arrived with us. But that said, when you do outsource to a professional development house, you are handing over a set of requirements, and often the expectation is that you're going to get a more complete product as your kind of first draft. So I think just by the very nature of people engaging with us, they are pretty much putting themselves in the corner of saying they are wanting something a bit more refined, and they're quite happy that they don't have the control over that flexibility, being able to just tweak and iterate the whole time. So it is challenging, and I think we do try to play a very consultative role to try and identify the key features, make sure we aren't getting anyone to invest in a bloated set of features, which is ultimately going to cost them money and not going to relate to any additional clients. But yeah, I think ultimately we do take a lot of steer from the founder and their vision.
You mentioned getting a bit of a bloated feature set, and typically MVPs, I mean, we want to strip away the complex and unnecessary technical components and really try validate a core value prop. Gary, I know you're involved in AI, and we managed to go 33 minutes, I think, without mentioning AI at this point, which is some kind of record for webinars, at least that I've attended. But being involved in AI and low code, how do you navigate such a complex topic such as AI, where with a tool or a set of tools, of low code tools, where the aim is to kind of strip back the complexity?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's still, you know, with its AI product, the thing is the focus is still on the problem, you know, and fixing that, you know. And often what I've found is that a lot of founders are solving problems with AI for the sake of AI, you know. They're solving a tool set instead of solving a problem. So it's a big challenge that they can fall into, you know. But the great thing now, just with the speed of AI and the speed of no code, is that you can really build these niche products that actually solve a real problem and get to niche markets very quickly. So there's some really exciting opportunities there. And even though, you know, everyone's doing the thin GPT wrappers, you know, that those are okay, and it can build you a bit of a moat and get an MVP out. But there's so much available models out there, you know. I mean, everything's pretty much open. You've got GPT, you've got Bard, you've got Palm and everything else, and you can literally just lap models on top of your layers, and you can literally build an MVP out there, you know, so which is exciting. And the other thing is as well is that, you know, with the future of AI and where it's going and code, there isn't really much of an interface you have to worry about, you know. Like there's always three things you had to worry about with product. It was always design, UX, there was tech, your different layers and what architecture you're going to use, and then the experience. And now the AI and the conversation is actually the UI, you know. So it's exciting, you know. So, and it's a really there's so many problems to solve, and you can really get to market really quickly, you know. The trick is to go niche, because I think everyone's just trying to go very wide, and it's the same old product problem. You've really got to find niche audiences, you know, and stick to the things that don't scale.
And we're starting to go towards kind of the execution and the build part and the more complex technical discussions. And a lot of people, I think that low code is simple, but I think, Taylor, as you mentioned, especially with Retool, you sit on kind of the high end of low code, and I'm sure everyone here has experienced that low code isn't as easy or as simple as everyone thinks it is. It can get quite complex and quite technical very quickly, especially once you've kind of set a feature set, and now you start building out your MVP and you start iterating with users. Niv, from your side, you've gone through this whole process and are currently going through it. So could you maybe give some insight in terms of the question of whether it's important in terms of having a technical co-founder or someone technical on the team, how important that is in the early stage, especially when we get to this execution phase of your MVP development?
Yeah, it's essential. You can't do it without someone technical or technical co-founder on the team. I'm not the technical one on the team at all. I think Nick was speaking about it earlier. Yeah, so I mean, especially building on Retool, it's not like I think the perception of what low code is, you can just drag and drop a few things, put it together with an arrow, and it works. But that's definitely not the case. There's some complex logic going on in the background that requires some smart minds, especially when you like getting into more sort of complex calculations and edge cases that exist in like specifically our like wage calculation part of Workweek. That's where it gets a bit hectic. But yeah, we definitely need technical expertise. And that's where trust comes in. And low code team over there, they've been immense, like building Workweek. It wouldn't be a product. What's Trust piping up saying over here? 400 lines of JavaScript to be precise. Yeah, exactly. That's for our overtime rule 2 feature, which is like just seen. It's literally just seen as one little like button where you can input the number 2 or 1.5 and press save. But behind that is 400 lines of like JavaScript to work out all of these edge cases and nuances and figure out, is it on this day or that day? And, so it's all of that behind the doors that people don't see with the low code, which gets a bit complex. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's Gary from your side. I know you've actually, in my research, found that you're the longest and have the most extensive developer history out of everyone in the call, interestingly enough. And from Trista's response here, we can see that building in low code can end up being quite fun because of how quick it is. In terms of your development in low code, how much fun do you actually have in terms of getting into the detail and building and actually executing? And what would maybe your message be to those that stay away from low code because they don't really embrace the kind of new revolution of these new tools?
You're asking 2 questions there. The one thing I'd say about not embracing it is the why, and often I've seen non-technical founders get flack from technical founders, and that's almost like a deterrent because it's like, oh, you're not doing it the purest way or you're not doing it the right way. And once again, it's not about, when customers are paying for your product, they're not looking at what code base you're using or what you wrote to get there. They're just looking at, is your product solving the problem, And I always look at like, technical people always find a very complex way. And that's, that's the beauty of product is trying to make things simple for the customer. You think about the original Dropbox story. If you look at the original comment on Y Combinator, I'll actually paste in the comments here. Where's the comments again? I love this. Should be it's very cool. But like, he points out like it was Drew Houston, and this was in 2007. He's saying, hey, throw away your USB stick. I've got this new solution for you. And then straight away, there's like a technical person saying, oh, this is so silly. For your Linux user, you can just build a system with FTP that like uses curl FTP with the SVN and CVS. And like, you don't, this is a bunch of waste of time and money, And once again, that's a technical person trying to really like make, they're technical people have always got solutions, I was at a talk today where like a technical person built his whole presentation with code. And I was like, well, what is that even necessary? There's like Google Slides. You don't need like code for everything. And once again, like you got to find the quickest and simplest route to market. You don't want to over you got to simplify the technical things. I hope that answers your first question. I don't know, what was your second question again?
The second question was more related to the people. I suppose it was related to people that don't embrace it and the kind of the fun of it, which
that was the second one. It was the first one. Yeah.
The first question.
Yeah.
The first question was just more in terms of the fun in terms of building in low code.
The fun is like, obviously like with building startups now, it's great for founders. Like I've built 1 or 2 fun side projects myself, but like where we are now with what we're doing is like, the exciting thing is like we've got an established product that's built by coders, right? Like they're like advanced engineers that are building some AI stuff. But we need to like build interfaces to test hypotheses with clients, So we're working along technical teams using no code to just validate some features, you know. So before they go ahead and build these advanced features, we can just validate those with some prototypes. So you can use it for launching new products and prototyping features that you're building in the future as well. So I suggested from early stage through to late stage, you can always use it at some part, you know. So yeah, I think gone are the days of I think, especially for a landing page. I can't remember the last time anyone actually coded landing page. You know, it'll be so silly. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's a great answer to that. And with that, Nick, I was looking in terms of at Revo. I was interested to see one of the job openings that you had at one point was a rapid software engineer, which is obviously a bit different to kind of the normal kind of title that we had. That people usually have. In terms of that role and people's progression in coming into Revo and being software engineers, how does that differ from the typical role of a software engineer, and what is the progression of people into that role?
I think I actually wanted to build a bit on what Gary was saying and almost like define technical in the low code era, because I think it's a bit different. Typically your software engineers, I don't know what the standard timeframes are these days, but are going to do a number of years in a particular language before someone considers them proficient enough to be senior or considered very technical. And I think that's such a cool opportunity in the low code space, because you can rapidly upskill and be able to deliver these products quite quickly. I mean, if you spend enough time, do enough projects and develop the experience, you can be considered an expert or technical in a very short space of time. And to me, the really nice thing about that is suddenly you've got people who've got completely diverse backgrounds being able to bring all that creativity and different thinking into the space. So your solutions aren't necessarily solved by a technical person who went to university, did computer science, did Python for 25 years. You've actually got someone who was maybe in the industry and picked this up and solving problems. So I think that's particularly cool in terms of the way that people can bring their unique experiences in. And then just in terms of the role that we've got, yeah, I think we call them rapid developers because things have moved on. The team are like extremely agile and flexible. Everything Niv's been saying about the ability to iterate and deliver changes within a day is completely how it is. And it's cool. And that rapid probably holds true for the progression within the company as well. You can move up the scales really quickly because you can deliver a lot of value to people.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for that answer. It's great insight from you there, and I think we could go on this topic for a long time. And I know we're starting to run out of time, and I know we've got a lot of questions to get into. So I wouldn't be able to have a low code or moderate a low code webinar without getting into the topic of scalability. At which point I kind of want to draw back now and open up the floor to scalability, because I know it's an issue that's always discussed. Taylor, I'm sure you've got unique perspectives in terms of how scalable you guys market your solution, and I'm sure all the founders here have questions about scalability and insight into that. So maybe Taylor, you want to start and we can open up the floor to discussing that.
Yeah. And it's kind of a segue from the conversation we were just having about low code in general too. I think like it certainly used to be the fact that low code was extremely hard to scale. And I think it's a story of, I mean, it's really just a continuation of the story of computing power over time in general. Like if you look all the way back, we used to write code in punch cards, and then assembly came out. And then everybody wrote assembly, and then compilers came out. And if you look at the reaction to the C compiler, the reaction was, this isn't going to scale. Why would you ever trust your code to a compiler when you can write assembly? It's going to be full of bugs and it's going to be unmaintainable and it's not going to scale. Same reaction when garbage collected languages like Java came out. So really, like low code, I see it as not like a different technology. It's just another natural layer up the stack where we can take advantage of that layer of that level of abstraction because we have the additional computing power, the Moore's law, faster chips to run that level of abstraction. So it's kind of just a natural progression of scalability. I think that's on the kind of computing scalability side. I think the other side that I think about a lot with Retool is development scalability. Is your app maintainable? And I think this is the problem that a lot of low-code platforms ultimately run into is you build an app and past a certain point, it's just kind of spaghetti and you can't figure out what's going on. You can't pass it off to someone else. It's been like hacked on the edges for so long that it falls apart. And that's not a problem unique to low code. It's a problem that exists in traditional code bases too. And it's a solved problem. Well, it's a partially solved problem in the sense that we have 60 plus years of software development that has evolved a set of methodologies that let you build things in a scalable way. So that's the approach that we're trying to take with Retool on some of my teams in particular, where we're trying to bring the lessons that have been learned in terms of traditional code, scalability, and maintainability, and bring those methodologies into the low code context. So things like source control, like making a change, opening up a branch, making a change on that branch, committing the change to that branch, opening up a pull request, having someone review your change to make sure it's good and well written and maintainable, and then merging that back in. Like that cycle has existed in traditional software development forever, and for good reason. It helps you build more maintainable code bases. And so we're pulling exactly that into Retool with source control. Also being able to develop in different environments, like having a dev environment with dev resources that let you tinker, having a QA environment, and then deploying to a prod environment. Methodology that's existed for decades in traditional software development that we're trying to bring into Retool. So when we think about scalability in Retool, one, we have a ways to go. I mean, the platform, we're constantly trying to push to what degree you can scale what you build in Retool. But we think about also not trying to reinvent the wheel, just kind of taking these techniques that have and best practices that have evolved in traditional software development and bringing them up the next layer of the stack into this more like visual realm, but taking the good parts.
So a great answer, and from your perspective, I'm sure scalability is something that's, I mean, you guys want to move towards. On the founder and venture side, you mentioned spaghetti code and getting to a point where your app is no longer scalable. Gary, Nicholas, Niv, you guys, I'm sure, have all been in this situation. Where does your perspective sit in terms of the scalability of low code and the future of low code related to scalability?
Yeah, happy to go. I think it always it depends, and I suppose my answer here is going to be like way less technical, but more of a story of low code not being able to scale for us and us making a decision to move to full code. And it was when we decided to pivot our actual app that was used by employees on their phone. And obviously, Taylor, in SA, like not everyone has a sort of like high processing power phone or like an iPhone or a Mac. Some people are using like super entry level devices. And for us, where we decided to pivot and build a quick low code employee app, which allowed employees to essentially clock in and out of work using a selfie. And that needed to go through to Retool, and we built that on Retool. That took a lot of processing power on their phone, and that didn't scale well at all for us because people are like waiting a minute to be able to be clocked into work, and you've got a line of 40 people like waiting there. And that was just a matter of understanding that sometimes, and I'm not sure if you guys have like changed now, but sometimes like low code does require a bit more processing power compared to like normal build. And that's just a nature of like knowing your users and knowing like who you're actually building for, because in testing we were all testing on like iPhones and MacBooks, and it was perfectly fine. But when you consider what like scalability means, I suppose it's like two different parts. There's the scalability in terms of not creating spaghetti, and there's the scalability in terms of knowing who your actual users are, what sort of devices they're using, doing load testing across multiple different types of devices, and then understanding if low code is going to be a good decision for you or not. For us, it wasn't, but I think the good thing there is that we could still connect our app that we now have, which is a PWA, to the low code dashboard. So those two things can work in tandem together, right? So people can now clock in with a pure build app, and it connects to a low code platform within the same organization. And that's, I think, where low code becomes beneficial, because you can still have the scalability and speed and not not affect the user in a bad way on this side. But then you can have the speed of development where you have more complex features on the dashboard, and you can develop that way quicker because it's in low code on that side. So I think it's like a balancing act of like knowing your user, knowing the device type, and just picking the right thing from there.
And that kind of segues perfectly into a question we've got from Rob in the chat here, where it's mentioned, how happy are you to chain low-code tools together, and have you found that this works fine up until a point? So anyone's welcome to pick this up. Carrying on from what Niven said, maybe Nick, Gary, Taylor, any insight you have to that?
And just give an example of something we've done recently where we've actually run into problems by using just one low-code platform. And it was quite a data-heavy application that we needed to put together. And we then made the decision to actually kind of farm out the back end to a separate tool, and that's worked amazingly. So I think the ability to chain these tools together is certainly not something to be scared of, and it actually is quite nice because it also drops your risk of like vendor lock-in. So you can use these different platforms as they suit you, which makes a lot of sense, I think, in terms of dropping that risk. And certainly increases scalability because you've now focused on certain platforms, like in this example, a specific backend platform that is going to allow you to go a lot further than maybe one platform that's trying to do everything.
Yeah, I think great answer. And I would add on to that too. I mean, it's a little talking against my book because Retool is trying to be kind of a more comprehensive platform, but I do think I would approach building a low code application set in the same way I'd approach building any kind of software, which is modularity is king, and building things in modularity, microservices, whatever kind of phrase you want to use, but building things in isolated pieces that communicate through very kind of clear interfaces. That's just good software development best practices, and there's no reason that those services can't be on different platforms that talk to each other. So I think, yeah, picking the best tool for the service that you're trying to build, but keeping the services internally consistent at least will make for the most maintainable system.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that as well. I think where you see the best successes is using like different types of MVP strategies. You've got like your concierge or your Wizard of Oz, and that's a different discussion, different talk, but most of the successful ones in the past have been the piecemeal strategy, where they've incorporated different tools, and one of the most popular ones for like the B2C sector is, you've got your type form, which is a form that links to a landing page, normally in a Webflow, that links to maybe another database, which is in like an Airtable, or you've got Glide and Retool, and so there's many ways to skin the cat, so it's quite good to just swap and interchange between them and see which ones work, and test them out, and they really are easy and to use, but it's important to have them knitted together and to learn how to knit them together. So Zapier and Make will be your friend for those kind of situations. Those like integrations with all these different tools.
And then just building on that, because we got another question from the audience that was sent through just before, which is almost related in some way of the question is, do I always have to build with the end in mind? Or can I switch platforms, technology when the time comes to do so? And that's kind of linked in the same way to kind of expanding your solution and integrating other tools as well. On this question, again, open to the floor, anyone welcome to pick it up. Do people have to build with the end in mind?
I'll jump in. I think the end in mind is always your hypothesis, and normally it changes very quickly. So you just got to think of the first step, and validate that. Like, once again, what is validation? I've seen people validate their MVPs with a basic form, signing up, linking to a Stripe link, asking for money, to see if, would you buy this package, sign up now and we'll let you know when it's launched. So it just depends. But the biggest trap I've seen most founders fall into is that trying to focus on the 10,000-foot view and trying to have the end in mind. And that end I've never seen anyone reach that end, like the honest answer. You pivot quite often.
There is no end. Yeah. Yeah, like I think it's a fair question, and I think it's like a question of what how far is maybe too far with going like low code, especially if you're probably like in our position, when is it a good time to take up like a dashboard platform away from low code? But there isn't an end point for that. There's never going to be a customer that doesn't ask you for something, that doesn't want something like added. I think it's a matter of building in a way where you can iteratively move things away from low code if that is necessary, and setting up correctly for that, so that doesn't have to be this. How is it possible that everything has to be agile and super quick, and the whole theme of this conversation has been speed, but then when you have to move away from low code, that has to be in one full go at one time. I don't think that has to exist in the same realm. It could be that we slowly start adding layers of full platform on top of low code, and eventually customers don't even know that they're on a low code platform anymore, like they don't know right now. So I think there is no end. I think customers are always going to be wanting more, and it's like to you to like make the decision as to what makes sense in an agile way.
I think that's some great insights. And as we approach the end of the webinar, I think to end things off, I would love maybe just 30 seconds from everyone. We were kind of talking about the next steps and where low code is going to go. What would you say you are most excited about the future of low code and no code, and what should everyone keep their eyes peeled for? We can start maybe, Taylor, do you want to start?
Yeah. I'll give maybe a boring answer, because I'm extremely excited about AI and also all the other kind of multifaceted approaches to low code that are coming out right now. But to me, and I mentioned this earlier, but I'm most excited about bringing in traditional software techniques into low code, because I think that's really what being a software engineer is in my mind. It's not knowing a specific language and knowing the intricacies of that language and being able to write that language. It's knowing kind of the methodologies and best practices that let you build a scalable system. And when the first generation of low code didn't have any of those like software development methodologies baked in, but I think when we successfully start baking those into Retool, and as other platforms adopt those too, I think we'll be able to see a whole new generation of low code applications built on these platforms that are just 10 times as big as anything you could build before, because of the methodology, not necessarily because of the platform itself. So that's what I'm most excited about.
I can see Niv with a big smile at the thought of a lot more Retool features coming his way. Niv, do you want to take up the next step of?
Yeah, I think it is that, when and I think it's been amazing to be a part of Retool's journey too. So from when they started off to like now, I don't think you guys were worth $4 billion when we like started using you guys. And I think that the way that the feature set has changed, and the capabilities of me going to Trist and being like, in the beginning of last year, hey Trist, is this possible? And it's like, no, this isn't possible. But asking exactly the same question now, it's like, bro, that's easy. Of course you can do that. And I think that's what excites me the most, is that as we continue on going through like this journey with low code, it's becoming more and more evident that and that reason that we just spoke about of when is it the right time to move. The further that companies like Retool evolve, and our Flutterflow coming in, the further that they build product and keep going, the more and more that date of us needing to move away from low code gets pushed out. Whereas I would say this time last year, we were in the same position. We would probably be like forced to move away, because the companies were like Retool weren't there. So that's what excites me, is probably the speed at which we'll continue to keep moving, and the lack of need for moving away for now.
It's a great answer. And Taylor, you've got yourself a loyal customer there. Nick, from your side, do you want to give some insight into what you're most excited about?
Yeah, similar to Taylor. I mean, AI is going to be huge. I think for me, the impact of it is also going to be in the developer experience, which like all knocks on to the fact that there's going to be so many more people who are going to bring like phenomenal ideas that were previously prevented from doing so. So I'm super keen for that, and I think that impact is going to be felt for a long, long time, and I can't wait to see that all play out.
Very well summarized. Good answer. Gary, do you want to close us off with what you're most excited about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously going to be biased towards AI, being involved in an AI project. So we're on the B2B side. So we're building stuff for organizations, right? That's going to help them grow. And the exciting thing is, I've just seen with how no code's developing, is that all these tools are built within it, so you can really accelerate your thinking. You can actually, like Niv was saying, the world's your oyster. You don't have to, whatever you think, whatever you want to do, it's there, and it's accelerating at a speed that you just can't keep up with. So it's just about focusing on your idea and your customers, and the rest will unfold. So it's like, there's no more excuses, it's all there, being built in. And the exciting thing is that every single no-code product is investing heavily into AI. So it's all being bolstered in. So you can literally automate everything, so it's, I mean, even from design to marketing to product, it's all there. So you've just got to stay focused. I think at the end of the day, that's the main thing with product, is don't fall for this shiny object syndrome. Stay focused on your customers and your product, and your main big, hairy, audacious goal. And I think the rest will follow suit.
Yep, another great answer. And I think we can definitely see the future of low code is certainly very, very bright. So thanks for the answers to that. We've neared the end of the webinar, and we've covered the majority of topics. And if there are any questions, please feel free to continue sending things through. As we end off, I just want to extend a huge thank you to our wonderful panelists for contributing so much value today. It's been super interesting for me, involved in low code, to be able to sit here and listen to you guys speak. I mean, definitely made my job easy, and I'm sure the audience has walked away with some very valuable information. To our audience members, thank you for the questions. Thank you for attending. Please continue to interact, share questions, whether it's through LinkedIn or any other way of getting in contact with Delta Accelerate. We will be sending through some resource pack in the next few days to ensure everyone has access to the information and some of the tools that were discussed. But other than that, from myself and from Delta Accelerate, just thank you everyone that was involved in this. I've loved being a part of this webinar. Thank you to the guests. Thank you for taking the time. Taylor, I know it's early on your side and you've got a full day of work ahead of you, but for us in South Africa, we've now got the end of the day to go off. And I look forward to seeing everyone at the next Delta Accelerate webinar. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Cal. Cheers, man.
Thanks, guys.